Streaming from Oklahoma's own digital studio, this is OSU Football Update, brought to you by Bronze.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to our podcast of Oklahoma State, all things Oklahoma State, mainly football. This is that time of the season, and we promise to keep our shirts on during this podcast. No one's going to be able to pay me enough to do what, it started with a 40-year-old, and then it spilled to current students, and then also to former students or would-be former students, maybe from the late 80s or 90s. And there was a lot that most of us can't unsee. So I'll just leave it at that. But in terms of grassroots, it was a fun sort of deal. It shows a lot of spirit, and it's being asked as if it's an entity all its own. It kind of is. It's suggested that maybe this thing will grow. So we'll see about the shirtless fans, the guys waving their shirts up in Section 231. That was a lot of fun. What happened on the field wasn't for OSU as they lost to Baylor 39-17. And before we go any farther, I hope that you've been enjoying these podcasts for all of our in-state teams. We ask you to punch that subscribe button so you'll get the latest updates on things. And, of course, we also want to thank our sponsor, Brahms, for helping make all this possible as well. So 39-17, the Cowboys lose to Houston. They actually came out very sharp and scored on their first possession, used a trick play to get it done. Sam Jackson, the fifth, starting at quarterback, another injury. Zane Flores gets sacked late in the third quarter at Arizona, landed on his right shoulder. He didn't suit up, was not available. Of course, Hoss Haney was injured in the season opener, and so now you're down to a guy who has played quarterback at Cal and at TCU. He's been well-traveled, but was a receiver at Auburn, and then came to the Cowboys as a receiver and kick returner, but was asked to start at quarterback. He welcomed the challenge, and scoring pass, it was a double pass. It was Jackson to Shamar Rigby, who the receiver who was behind Jackson, because you have to be. That's part of the deal. And then he found Rodney Fields Jr. sneaking out of the backfield. It was the perfect call against the defense that Houston had, and it gave the Cowboys their first lead at 7-0 since they led Tulsa 3-0 after their first possession of that game. And unfortunately for OSU, just like in that Tulsa game, the lead was short-lived. But to give OSU some credit, it was 10-10 midway through the second quarter, and they were showing a lot of fight. Defensive line was playing pretty well. Offensive line was playing pretty well. They were all even with the Cougars. And then what coaches like to call the middle eight, and we talked about this on Saturday night, the middle eight, the last 4 minutes of the first half, first four of the second half. Basketball coaches talk about that too. If you stretch that out to about a 12, 13-minute stretch to overlap halftime, that's where Houston really took control of the game and went on to pull away. Connor Wigman, the quarterback for Houston, was really good. Receivers made some outstanding catches, and the Cowboys just couldn't keep up. But let's talk about Jackson for a second. He deserves a ton of credit. And you look for guys in times of crisis and just the chaos that's been going on within the program. They're trying to settle all that down as they look for a new head coach. But Jackson could have responded to interim head coach Doug Meacham with a, hey, coach, I know you need a quarterback, but I don't think that's the best thing for me personally, because he's thinking in terms of his future and what it might be at a professional level. And so that it's not going to be at quarterback. But instead, he answered the call when they needed a starting quarterback. And it was pretty interesting what Jackson had to say immediately after the game Saturday night.
It was my decision to change my position. And I don't really think that my circle and the people around me thought that I should do that. It was just me trying to be mature about what I got going on.
I just appreciated that he would do that for his teammates. And I know he loves playing quarterback, but I think he feels like moving forward, if he had a chance at the next level, it'd probably be as a return guy or a slot receiver. So he's kind of making a sacrifice as well, He's put a few games on tape, which demonstrates the ability to, to be a slot and a return guy. And I know that, just like all these kids, there's a a lot of opinions coming at him, and I just appreciate him doing what we need as a team, and that's what he's doing. He's a good teammate, good kid, and just kind of glad we have him, right now.
You have to have a ton of respect for Sam Jackson for making that selfless sort of decision. And, guys, his teammates who've decided to fight through this and not go into the portal or not redshirt for whatever reason, those guys were going to want to play for him. Center Austin Kowecki said specifically, that makes us all want to fight even harder. And it's a great thing to see in the midst of a very, very tough situation. Now, we mentioned the double pass. And Shamar Rigby, who has been probably, maybe the best receiver, or maybe should be targeted more. And there's a variety of reasons why he hasn't caught more passes. But at least he was in the midst of that play. And even though he slightly underthrew Rodney Fields Jr. on that touchdown pass, he got it to him. And Doug Meacham, the interim head coach, was asked how Rigby responded when that play was called.
Super excited, Who wouldn't want to throw a TD pass? And it was funny because we did a Friday walkthrough, and we ran the play, and somebody tells Shamar to throw it back to the quarterback, which is not an option. And he threw it. Thank goodness we walked through the thing, because we said, son, it's either throw it to that guy or you're running the ball. That's it. And otherwise, he may have thrown it back to the quarterback, and we wouldn't even known it. So that's the beauty of walkthroughs and practice. It kind of, you put them out there, you let them practice, and you see what they mess up, and then you can fix it. You know what I mean? Like we did that walkthrough, and we fixed a play that would have never happened maybe if we hadn't had that walkthrough. So, but to answer your question, yeah, those guys, like I said a week or so ago, wide receiver is a tough gig. You're running 5,000-6,000 yards for a maybe, and guess what receivers think they are every single play? Wide open, and it gets frustrating. So when you have a play where I know I'm getting it and I'm going to throw it, this is going to be awesome, they're always pretty excited about it.
So maybe this will help jumpstart some good, productive games from Rigby. Of course, the quarterback has to get him the ball. The other thing the Cowboys need to do more as they look ahead to Cincinnati is they've got to find a way to run the ball. It's been kind of hit or miss. There have been games where Rodney Fields has been very effective, and he ran hard, and he saw holes. He saw defenses where things were to cut back. He saw those pretty well. Now, there weren't a whole lot of open lanes, but that's not a knock on the offensive line necessarily, because they've actually been playing better. Maybe the highlight of that loss to Oregon was the fact that the offensive line had made so many strides from the season opener to game 2. It's just that it got buried in an avalanche of points up in Eugene. But needing to run the ball for obvious reasons, it takes pressure off of Sam Jackson, the fifth. First down plays against Houston, the Cowboys threw the ball an awful lot, but they were only 2 for 10 on first down passes. And some of that was that Houston's defense had the right play called. They forced Jackson out of the pocket. And other times, although Sam made a connection on a couple of good throws, one to Cam Abshire for 35 yards. Other than that, it was a little bit off target, little bit, some of it's just, look, he hadn't started at quarterback in years. So Jackson should improve. Doug Meacham, as he expects, a lot of improvement from game 1 to game 2, especially in these areas where he said today, you can watch all of the video on a team and the tendencies that you want. You can watch yourself going against Houston, and that should help a little bit, but there's no substitute for actual game action. And so we always talk about a team with a lot of players that are seeing their experience for the first time at this level. The biggest improvement usually comes from game 1 to game 2, and I think you can keep that on the individual level as well. So you expect Jackson to be pretty good. The tough thing about this one is this is yet another 3-3-5 defensive scheme that they're going to be facing, and it's a very good Cincinnati team who's been very good against the run. We've talked in the last couple of weeks about Arizona's 3-3-5 is not like Houston's 3-3-5, which is not like Cincinnati's 3-3-5. And when you talk about that scheme, 3 down linemen, 3 linebackers, 5 defensive backs, or a variation of those, some of them are more aggressive than others. And we go back to West Virginia kind of was the first one in terms of Big 12 teams to really run that under Tony Gibson. Iowa State under John Haycock really kind of perfected it and allowed Iowa State to force teams to have to earn their way down the field. Their big deal is don't get beat deep. Have them have to go on 15, 16 play drives without making a mistake to find the end zone. And they were able to do that, and part of it was maybe Iowa State's not getting the elite talent along the secondary or players that other teams have, although they've done pretty well in recent years. But the whole idea is to make you earn your way down the field. Doug Meacham talked about how Cincinnati's defense is different than Houston's, which is different than Arizona's, and he talked at length about that today.
There's a lot on them because it's total UFO stuff out there now. It's like show this way, go that way, show a blitz here, bring it the opposite direction to get their point the opposite. And, there's tips, cap safeties or capping nickels or capping people to be able to determine blitz, press corners, wide safeties into the boundary, corner fire, all that stuff factors in. And those guys have a lot on their plate, man. And sometimes they're wrong because they're good on defense at, making you think it's this and it's not. And, back when I played, it was you're a cover 3 team or a cover 2 team. That was kind of it. And if you're a 3 technique, you played the B gap. If someone ever twisted when I played, everybody lose their minds. Like, what just happened? So I don't think anybody even actually just charges straight up field and plays gaps anymore. It's all gap exchange, 2 gap, swap, twist. You put your running back over here. They're running games opposite the back because he's typically coming across. And, it's a large amount. I wish we could kind of call a ceasefire. We could all go home a little earlier during the week. You know what I'm saying? And we'll calm down if you calm down. We'll slow down if you calm down type thing. But yeah, it's just the way it is right now. And so you just try to find plays that are kind of all purpose, the best you can.
Meacham describing how centers on your offensive line have to really be alert to what they're seeing and understand that there's a variety of things that could happen off of whatever Cincinnati may line up as. Before we go any further and talk a little bit about Cincinnati, let's make sure and once again recognize our sponsor, Brahms.
Brahms Banana Fudge Sundae gives a whole new meaning to decadent taste. 2 creamy scoops of premium vanilla ice cream overflowing with delicious hot fudge and fresh slices of banana to create the perfect balance between the fruity banana flavor and rich hot fudge. Treat yourself to a banana fudge sundae at Brahms, where every spoonful is pure bliss.
The Cincinnati Bearcats are having a great year, 5-1. A close loss to Nebraska in the season opener where they had a pass. They were driving for a potential game-winning touchdown. I believe that was at Arrowhead Stadium in Kansas City. That's the only one they've lost. They are tied atop the Big 12 standings at 3-0. Sorsby, their quarterback, has been very efficient. He's one of the best in the country in that department, but they also have a very strong running game, a couple of running backs who are big and physical and fast in some cases. So the task for the OSU defense will be a very large one once again. You could say that perhaps Cincinnati's offense is a little better than Houston's offense, but that Sorsby may be a little more dynamic than Wigman, but we also may be splitting hairs here. Cincinnati with a ton of momentum coming in at 3-0 in the Big 12. And, the one thing for the Cowboy defense, Clint Bowen had said after the game with Houston that some of the changes that he's trying to implement since Todd Grantham was let go at defensive coordinator is that he's trying to keep teams in front of them. We talked about the Iowa State philosophy. Well, that's kind of what OSU is doing, and they're trying not to get exposed on big plays. The problem is if you don't get a good enough pass rush or you don't tackle well, then there's going to be a lot of pressure put on your back 4 anyway, 4 or 5, depending on the if you got a nickel in there or not. So Cowboys just need to be sure tacklers, and they have to be more fundamentally sound, especially in the secondary. If they can do those things, you're going to give yourself opportunities down the rest of the season here as you start the second half of the season. But your margin for error is so slim that you can't afford to give up extra yards after contact, after yards after the catch, and you have to make sure that you are playing clean football. And doesn't sound like a whole lot, but it's necessary for this team to snap this losing streak and to feel good once again after a few weeks of uncertainty and frustration and so forth. But it's a 7 o'clock kickoff for homecoming. The Cowboys pushed to have that game played later since the annual homecoming parade is in that morning. And we'll see how the Cowboys can respond. And we appreciate you for watching. Again, hit that subscribe button, and we'll talk to you next time.
Thank you for watching this Oklahoma's own digital studio stream. Stay with News on 6 online and on television anytime for the latest news, weather, and sports.